It's prepping to, it's setting it up.
Tell me when I'm on.
Says it's live.
Okay. We rolling?
Yep.
This meeting of the Texas. Hello.
It's setting it up.
Tell me when I'm on.
Says it's live.
Good morning. This meeting of the Texas Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners is now called to order. The time is, according to everyone else, 10:05. Mine says 10:01. Sorry for the delay. May I have roll call, please, Dr. Kreiner?
Yes, ma'am. Jessica Quillivan,
Present.
Keith Pardue,
Present.
Sandra Lynn Kreiner, present. Carlos Chacon,
Present.
Samantha Mixon,
Present.
Michael White,
Present.
Randy Skaggs,
Present.
Sue Allen,
Present.
and Victoria Whitehead.
Present.
And I would like to extend a welcome to Miss Whitehead. Welcome to your first TBVME board meeting. I prefer them in person, but one day we will get there. Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. I'm excited to join.
We're glad to
Glad
have
to have you.
Okay, next item is consideration and approval of the, by the way, I'm deeply missing my gavel, so I'm very sad that I didn't get to open the meeting with it, but we'll move on to tab 2. Consideration and approval of the January 28th, 2020 minutes. The minutes were sent to all of us for early review. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I
Second.
would like a correction made to the minutes before we do that. Can we do that now?
I think we move to approve and then there's discussion. And then if we are changing, Brittany, is that correct?
Okay.
We should move, any corrections should be made and then we will move to approve as corrected.
Okay,
Okay.
Correction.
I am not sure that this is correct. Mr. Pardue, do you have a doctorate?
Yes, I do.
You do have a doctorate.
Wow.
Okay. So my question was, do we want to refer to Mr. Pardue as Dr. Pardue for,
Not typically lawyers are not referred to as doctors, but I do have a judicial doctorate. Yes. But
okay.
no, that's not typically done.
yeah, we don't typically write it like that, I don't think, but I don't.
That's what I thought, because that's what it has in the minute meetings, and I'd like that corrected because I don't want him to be mistaken for a veterinarian when
I
he's a
agree.
public member.
Where is that? Because on the roll call list, it's Mr. Keith Pardue, but I,
Correct, but it's in the meeting minutes. Hold on, let me see.
as motions he's taken or something.
Under agenda item 4.
Okay. Thank you for finding that for us.
I always knew he was a distinguished gentleman. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Very distinguished.
Handsome as well.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Go, Keith. Excellent. Love it.
Not too humble. Not too
No.
humble.
Why be humble when you have all that?
Right.
Okay. Any other changes that anyone has noted? I will take that as a no. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? None heard, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Okay, minutes are accepted. Let me move forward. Now we are on to agenda item 3, our executive director's report.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You have in your latest paperwork an executive director's report in written form, but just to touch base on what we've been doing since our last meeting in January. Obviously, in February, we did a round of strategic planning meetings where we went to El Paso, Amarillo, and Fort Worth to conduct stakeholder meetings in those locations. A great turnout in El Paso and Amarillo, as well as Fort Worth. good feedback. While we were on that trip coming back, the governor put a travel restriction order out. And so what we were not able to continue on those trips that we had scheduled for Houston and South Texas. However, we did complete the first round, and so that feedback was good. And thank you for Dr. Quillivan and other board members for attending those meetings. Shortly thereafter, the agency moved to a complete telework policy based on the governor's direction and COVID-19 required protocols. And so starting in March, the agency went completely remote within about 48 hours of notice. Fortunately, we had all the technology necessary to do that. So that worked out for us. Our agency, has been working remote ever since with very little interruption in services that we provide. Obviously, with cases pending a board meeting coming together, we have some cases that need to be disposed of, but our core services of licensing and investigating has continued on in a remote fashion. So we became a cloud agency almost overnight. And so that's been interesting to work through, but the staff has done an amazing job of coping and adjusting to that as we move forward. Dr. Quillivan touched on a new board member. Ms. Whitehead was appointed. She completed her statutory required training to participate here as a board member. And so like Dr. Quillivan said, we welcome her. On the staff side, we have a new chief financial officer, Ernie Palacios, down there in the corner. Ernie came to us after retiring, after serving 28 years with the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. His bachelor's degree from Texas or Southwest Texas State, and he's a CPA, and we are happy to have him on board. He got here just in time for the LAR. He literally hit the ground running. I know most people say that, but in his case, it's absolutely true. He hit the ground running. The LBB instructions came out a couple weeks after he got here, and it's been full steam ahead on that. Speaking of Sunset, obviously we're under our Sunset re-review. The Sunset staff has been here and conducting, that's cloud-based, conducting meetings with the staff and reviewing our current procedures. And so we look forward to their findings and recommendations. They are soliciting public comment. So if you have any comment or you have anybody who has public comment, their contact information is posted on the front page of our website. And so they look forward to receiving any comments from the public or our licensees. The hot topic past that is continuing education. Obviously, we suspended continuing education requirements under the governor's emergency declaration for COVID-19. We've been encouraging licensees to get as many continuing education hours as they can, although we did suspend that requirement. Currently, the plan is to keep that suspended at least 45 days after the disaster declaration is lifted. However, you have an agenda item today to discuss continuing education going forward, so we'll look forward to that discussion. Also, as a requirement of the response to COVID-19, the governor asked most agencies to reduce their operating expenses by 5% for fiscal year 20 and 21. So for us, most of our money is in our salary strategy. And so that amounts to 2 positions on a 5% cut. One position was the paralegal position, and it was currently open, so we froze that position. Another position was slated, but we were able to find funds elsewhere in the agency to not have to do a layoff of a second position. And so the LBB going forward kept that 5% reduction on our baseline. So our budget forecast for FY 22 and 23 included the 5% reduction that was made in 20 and 21 as a base item. So again, that 5%, when you cut into 5% of an agency that operates very lean, it gets difficult. So we had to, at the last minute, add really 3 exceptional items to our legislative appropriations request. One was restore the 5% funding. As you know, that we are funded by our licensing fees and not funded through general revenue. So we're a recovery agency where we're initially funded through general revenue, but then we recover those amounts through fees. So we're asking for that 5% to be restored to the agency. Secondly, we're asking for additional travel money because of our travel restrictions this year. It's going to be necessary to do increased inspections and investigations going forward into those other years to get caught up. That the money that we did not use this year in travel does not carry forward. And so it exhausts at the end of the fiscal year. The last exceptional item that we filed with the for the LAR is that furniture for the new building. As you know, we're slated to move into the 1801 Congress building in February through July timeframe of 2022. And so the Facilities Commission wants agencies to ask for furniture and such for that new building. They're recommending that no one move anything from the current building, as I think the plan is to sell it in place when this building goes away. So those were the 3 items that we asked for. Next, we have a new data system that everybody has been super excited about getting. It launched internally for us yesterday. We spent most of the day working out, obviously, the kinks that happen when you open a new system, but everything looks good. We're expecting to have that opened up to our licensees this week for them to create a portal and be able to go in and see their license information and their address and do some self-service of their license once they're in there. So more to come on that. We do have an instructional video prepared that will go up at the same time to help kind of give directions on how to navigate that new system. AASVB annual conference opened today virtually. Because of the way they're doing registration this year, it's open to all of the board members and staff. So if you're interested in attending those over the next 3 days, let Patricia know, but you're able to do that. Moving on, we look at our financial outlook. You'll see that we completed the last fiscal year. At the end of the year, we came out with 93% expended. That does not include the 5% reduction. So when you add the 5% reduction in there, we're at 98% of the budget expended. So we ended right on the mark when it comes to our budget for this year. Licensing, you see there where our licensing numbers are. Active license count 8947. These numbers came out of the new system after the data migration, and so you're seeing cleaned up data coming from the sugar system into the new system. Next, you'll have some enforcement stats. Notably on here, enforcement has cleared out all of the FY18 cases, and they're down to 45 cases on the FY19. And then, of course, 20 cases we have 145 of. One thing that you will also notice is that as of the 8/31/20 numbers there on the enforcement view, enforcement cleared out 447 cases this fiscal year. That obviously is attributed to the fact that inspections are lower, or we couldn't do inspections during that time, and so they were working on clearing out cases. So we made a pretty good headway on FY cases out of enforcement. Then you'll see our legal cases, 373 currently pending in legal, with 207 of those being pending board action. And so that is what I have for an executive director's report. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to add, I know Ms. Whitehead has not been in previous meetings, and in the last meeting, I'm pretty sure I encouraged everyone to attend in person the AAVSB meetings, especially board members who have not been before. But now you don't even have to travel or go away from home. So I would encourage everyone to create their account and at least watch or log into a few of the sessions to see what's happening and educate ourselves further as far as regulation goes in other boards across the country, and even in Canada and some of the provinces. We get to hear from lots of people and learn from others and be an example for others. So it's really been good and eye-opening for our board, I feel, and the board members that have been, and our staff members who have been very helpful. So look for that. I'm upset today was, I think, one of the CBD talks, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and I am not able to make it. So I'm hoping they're recorded and we get to watch them again. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Hellenberg? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 4, discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding proposed rule changes to be published in the Texas Register. Ms. Sharkey.
Thanks, Dr. Quellivan. So as COVID is happening, we are seeing this issue arise with continuing education, that a lot of conferences, in-person classes, and things like that are obviously moving online. Now, while we've waived the requirements while the disaster declaration is ongoing, it's raised the issue of what happens after this. We've been encouraging our folks to get as much CE as they can online, but there are still requirements for in-person CEs versus virtual. So I wanted to bring it to the board to, at least for an introductory discussion on potentially doing away with the in-person requirement and allowing our licensees to get all of their continuing education online or virtually. So obviously, not being a veterinarian myself, I don't necessarily have quite the technical knowledge on this, and wanted to put it to the board for a discussion. So I welcome any input, any thoughts on this potential change.
I have a couple concerns on this.
ahead.
I think that one of the things that you cannot replace is colleague interaction. At these meetings, there are fantastic discussions that happen outside the formal CE rooms, table topics of discussion, labs that are offered to give you practical hands-on experience in procedures that are new to you. I would not be for moving to that platform of allowing all CE to be virtual.
Is this?
I mean, obviously, right now, obviously, we have an unusual situation. So until this is lifted, that's a moot point. But I don't think going forward, I would be for that.
Well, I have a little bit of a different take on that. I think when we're not allowing virtual CEs, it's really hurting the people in my area, in remote areas of Texas, because in order for me to go to a continuing education seminar, it requires at least 6 hours of travel, sometimes 10 hours of travel. And then, you're missing the time that you're taking to go to the conference, the time you're getting to come, takes to come back. So it's a major expense as well for some of us veterinarians out in the middle of nowhere to make these physical continuing education, events. And honestly, I understand that, Dr. Mixon's comment of there's a lot of personal interaction that is beneficial, but I don't know if that outweighs the almost the unfairness of penalizing people that are out in the middle of nowhere compared to you guys that are living in Houston or Dallas or somewhere where, you can take the afternoon and go to the conference. We require 17 hours, and 10 or less than that can be, online as it is. So I just don't really know that it makes that much of a difference whether our continuing education is in person or online. You get what you get out of it. So some folks are going to go and be all in really participate and get a lot of continuing education. And then, as well as I do, some of them are taking naps in the middle of the talks and not getting much out of it. So, and I'm open to either way, but I do think it is a little bit challenging for those of us out here in the middle of nowhere to get to continuing education, because it's requiring extra days off away from our clients. Like in Perryton, I'm the only veterinarian, in a 30-mile area. So it kind of creates an inconvenience for my clients to get somewhere else. But, I'm kind of open for either way, but I'm leaning more towards the fact that, we could benefit a lot of folks from doing it online.
And also not just rural, but solo practitioners. I mean, how do you leave your practice for days at a time? I mean, I know there's relief and there's ways you've been doing it, but solo practitioners, it's difficult for.
I agree.
I see it both ways as a solo practitioner and, as someone who, previous to some of the really great Texas meetings we had for the horses, you go to AAEP and you might be in Orlando, Florida, or you might be in Seattle, Washington, or, someplace that takes 3 or 4 hours just to get a flight there. I think we could find a compromise and, every other year require X amount of in-person so that you still have your 17 per year. Or you can call it 34 in 2 years. And of that 34 in 2 years, you need X number of hours that is in person. So that's cost saving, and it still allows for the virtual world, which we've come to because look at all the kids going to school, going to high school, going to college that are now going virtually and learning from home. It's not homeschooling, it's schooling at home, which there's a difference. And so with the exception of like the hands-on, either the hands-on dental or the hands-on new surgical procedures or the hands-on ultrasound or something like that, I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do, especially with these platforms. The slides are the slides, whether you're sitting at your desk or you're sitting in a dark room trying not to fall asleep. And, the cost effectiveness would probably make a lot of people happy. It may not make the vendors happy, but, that might be a good thing for the rest of us who are trying to find those discounts from the vendors. So I think instead of saying all in yes and all in no, maybe we can just come up with a compromise that gives us our 17 hours and doesn't require us to catch a flight or drive 6 to 10 hours every year, maybe every other year, where we get a certain number of hours in person.
Well, and this would not necessarily, this would just remove the requirement. So there still very well could be, in person, especially for those sort of more specialized areas where hands-on is very beneficial. But, for folks who are more general practitioners, solo rural practitioners who don't necessarily need hands-on, that they'd be able to do this. And I will say too, this recommendation also came out of our compliance investigator, Jared Honrath, who has been talking to at last count about 2,000 licensees since all of this started about CE requirements, and a lot of those folks have requested doing away with the in-person requirement just generally. So this is coming from a compilation of licensees as well.
And the problem with doing away with the in-person is that we don't right now have a way of tracking the virtual or the,
We do.
I mean, they still have to be approved through our normal approval process.
Right. But I mean, how do you know that someone did all their 17 hours? They could have done, I think it makes it easier to track when someone can prove that they've been someplace than just to sit in front of the computer. Like I know that my USDA accreditation that I get 6 hours for, I know that's tracked, and I can use that 6 towards my 17.
Get a certificate for that, Lynn, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I get certificates for, 1 and 2 hour certificates for other things. but you don't get a certificate for compendium article that you might read, right? Or do you?
I would think they have to send you one because you have to have proof that you've taken it. I know that all the virtuals that I'm approving, especially in COVID time, I mean, they were meant to have a lunch and learn, but they're trying to do it via Zoom. So I'm approving those, but they describe out what they're going to do and how they're going to track their attendance, and then what they're sending a certificate, you know, via email to the person. So I think whenever we renew, we're saying, yes, we just check this little box. And I think part of Jared's job, Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, is to randomly say, okay, you send me your 17 hours now. I want to see what they are. And if they don't have certificates for those, I think the provider, whether they're online or in person, has to give you a certificate.
And I will say,
Go ahead, Brittany. I'm sorry.
from my perspective, so as a lawyer, we actually can get all of our continuing education online, and they have it sort of built into these virtual systems where, you know, I have to sit through all, 12 hours of my CE before I can claim my credit, and then it goes into my account. So, I mean, I'm sure you can fudge the system and not pay attention, but I think you can also do that in person as well. And I think you're always going to get into it what you put into it, or get out of it what you put in. And I would just say that other licensing boards have grappled with this and have been able to kind of track attendance and all of that as well. So it's definitely something that we have the technology capabilities to do.
Brittany, do you have a markup version? The version we have in our book is like a new version you guys are proposing based on prior discussions. Is there a markup that we can see?
No, because, oops, sorry, y'all.
Whoa, fall down.
Sorry, y'all, my laptop just fell. No, this was really, I wanted to bring it to just a discussion with you all and kind of get a sense of where the board was, if there was, some agreement that I could bring more specific language to the next meeting for further discussion.
I like the idea of a compromise. I mean, I didn't mean that we shouldn't have any virtual education, but I'm also concerned about, I'm a little concerned about the isolating factor of being a solo practitioner. I know for myself and for Lynn and listening to Dr. Skaggs, it's very isolating a lot of times in our profession when you're alone 24/7 and you don't have colleagues. And I just remember at vet school that they highly encouraged us to go to CE, not just for the continuing education factor, but continual colleague interaction and just that support you get from meeting other people in your field. It's just, there's an intangible to that. And I'm not saying you should have to go every year, or that maybe for everybody it isn't valuable, but I'm concerned about a large number of factors for the industry as a whole.
Well, I think that's a good compromise as well. If you're doing it every other year, it kind of gives us a chance to test it out and see how it works for us. I think it's a good compromise for both sides. If you have to get 7 every other year, as long as it doesn't create a hard regulation issue for us where our enforcement is so challenging with it. And that's one thing I'm concerned with. We don't want to overload those guys in an already stressed environment, but I'm ready for any kind of compromise. It's great.
I will say that I think the every other year piece would be very challenging from an enforcement perspective, and also just from a communication to our licensees perspective. So, I can tell you that, like I said, Jared's talked to about 2,000 licensees about continuing education since this started. I can't imagine the influx of phone calls that this could potentially create. So it's not only a tracking, but it's also a informational campaign to our licensees, and trying not to make this so confusing to them either. So that's, I want to make sure that this really was done with the spirit of making things easier for licensees. So I don't want to overly complicate or overly burden them.
They're already used to it with opioid, right? That's an every 2-year process, right?
Yes, but that was also a legislative mandate where we didn't really necessarily have control over that that process. So here, where we do have a little bit more control, I think it would be, we definitely want to make sure that we're considering within our existing framework how difficult it would be or not be.
I will add to that I think, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, but I think there are other states where you have to get your CE hours on a biannual instead of every year. So you could do 34 hours in 2 years instead of being checked every year. And I'm just throwing more wood on that fire.
Sure. And those are also likely states that have 2-year license renewal period. So it just makes sense to make sure that the CE lines up with the license renewal, and trying to extend it beyond that is a little bit squiggy, I think.
Squiggy, an official word?
Yes, it is.
Squiggy.
Question.
I thought that was like Laverne and Shirley. Okay, sorry.
What portion of CEs that are available in Texas are actually hands-on based? I mean, because I would understand that if there's a percentage of offerings that must be hands-on versus not, couldn't the CEs be proportionate as such?
Well, right now, I think requires 7 hands-on and 10 or less could be virtual.
So you're proposing the 7 hands-on be virtual?
Yes.
Well, in person is different than hands-on. Ms. Whitehead, hands-on to me would be a laboratory where you're going and actually have either models or whatever, and you're learning bandaging techniques or learning CPR, like we have dummy dogs now, like they have dummy people, and even hands-on ultrasound with live animals. The specialty centers often open up their doors for a weekend day. And to me, that's hands-on, and that's really growth opportunities for adding a skill to yourself that you could offer your clients. But I think when you're saying hands-on, y'all, in that conversation, you were more talking about in-person CE versus virtual CE, I think.
I'm thinking more of what you're describing, like physical learning hands-on. And I completely understand Dr. Skaggs' opinion, even out here in my area, the ability to get CEs and what that looks like. I know the medical science facilities here are moving even medical doctor education to virtual reality type trainings in light of COVID. So I new, of course, but understand that there's virtual reality being done in the human sense. So it wouldn't seem to me that wouldn't also be implemented in the veterinary sense.
And with techs, we have to get 10 a year. 5, I believe, can be online. But listening to a lot of conversations with techs, many of them would like to go to the big conferences, the face-to-face ones, but those costs aren't covered necessarily by their employer, or they're scheduled to work on most of the Saturday of those conferences. So I don't know. Like on some of the ones I've been doing online, you have to participate. If it's an hour CE, you have to participate and be logged in at least 50 minutes to get that certificate. And we do get, there's 50 LBTs randomly audited every year, so we have to prove that. I think there is value, like some of you have said about that face-to-face. You do get that collegiality, you get to visit, but I think those that are going to participate in that would do so anyhow, versus being mandated to do so. I think the ones that are going to do that are going to do it regardless of whether or not that's a requirement. But I think on the tech side, for some of those techs on the financial issue and just scheduling, it would be easier for them to get them online. And I know somebody that said, I was on a Austin group CE. I didn't have to travel. It was 2 hours to drive there. It was great. There was not an expense, and they found value in that. So I think there's good and bad on both sides.
And I think what's also going virtual, Dr. Mixon, to address your concern, and I am also from the time and era before a lot of IT, where we did, have local meetings and the same 25 doctors went there. How you doing? How's your practice? And we talk about business too. And we talk about clients, and we, not actual clients, but how things are going in the industry and things like that. And also moral support. But all of that is also on Facebook now, and like the DVM support group and DVM moms. And, you can get that interaction. And we even have a class of A&M blah, 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 10-year long group, 84 to 94, I think, or whatever it is that, classmates, I can see my classmates on there and they're posting cases. What would you do here? It's like a live consult, kind of input, phone a friend, just like we would do over coffee or over dinner, at the meetings. So it's there still, but I agree with you, Dr. Mixon. It's not exactly the same, but the support is still there as well, I feel like. And
Okay.
the people who are going to use it are going to use it, and the people who are not never were anyway. So
I do want to point something out because I know at one point the rule did say how many hours you needed to have in person and how many could be computer or
reading or whatever.
Yeah. And I just reread the rule while we're sitting here. And all it says is 17 hours of acceptable continuing education. It does not break it down.
Well, if it doesn't break it down, then that's kind of a moot point. So then you could do 17 however you wanted then, basically.
I mean, I just read what was put up here, 573.64, the requirements, and it doesn't break it down. I mean, I know it was there at one point. I guess we haven't looked at this recently.
Okay.
So that is a proposed, what it would look like if we were just to take that out as a.
Oh, this is the proposed. This is proposed.
What you're looking for, Dr. Kreiner, is 573.65, proof of acceptable continuing education breaks out the breakdown.
Okay, I thought this was.
No, sorry, Dr. Kreiner, that is just with the specified requirements pulled out. So we could kind of, if we wanted to talk about specific language, so I could work something up and propose it to you all next time.
Yeah, so we'd have to review this rule and.
I personally think this is something that's more important than just the 5 of us. I think this is a question for the stakeholders.
Well, and that's also why we craft a rule and we publish it to the Texas Register.
Yeah.
And
get public comment.
We get lots of feedback for theoretically a limited period of time, but it's not like we have a board meeting every 30 days. So it's really open to comment and feedback long-term from our colleagues and friends. And yeah, again, Brittany, I think it would be nice. And yes, all of us have been basically reading 200 cases before this. And I didn't pay attention to this drafted comment, I have to admit, but it would be nice to either have a markup or have the original and that one side by side as we're discussing, but we can certainly, leave open for discussion, or I don't know if we're at the point where we would want to propose something.
Yeah, I think the purpose was to get this discussion so that we could put something together for you based on your discussion for you to review.
Dr. White, what are your views?
Good job.
I didn't know if I was going to be able to say anything.
What? Where are you?
I'm kidding. I have to agree with Miss Allen. I've been in both situations where I've been rural, hard to get to someplace, and then I've been in a big metropolitan area. I think that the piece that you're going to get out of it, what you put into it, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. And I really think that we should not be requiring one or the other. I think it should be an open 17 hours and you get it the way you want to, whether it's virtual or, in person.
Dr. White, is that your office? Or are you in a background? Because that aquarium is so cool.
I can't have a real one because I don't want to have to clean it, but I have it on my TV.
That is awesome. I'm jealous.
It makes bubbling sounds too, if you want it.
That's cool. I like that. That is so amazing. That's awesome. I like that. Okay, sorry.
I have a question. Do DVMs get audited too, like tax randomly audited to prove CE? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah, what we can do is we can put both, we can put 2 rule versions together, and then come back for the next meeting with 2 rule versions, and then you can take a look at and nominate whichever one you want to go forward as proposed. And then I'm sure in the meantime, we'll receive comments based on this discussion as well.
That'll work.
Any other closing comments or items on this agenda item? Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to agenda item 5, discussion recommendation and possible action regarding licensees and the number of times they are permitted to take the NAVLE exam. Dr. White.
Sorry, forgot to hit my mute button. Let me find my stuff here. It gets a little confusing, and I hope I have all this correct, but I think there is still some confusion on the board's policies or rules concerning the number of times a person can take the NAVLE or the VETTEC national exam. And so if I understand it correctly, we are a member of the International Council for Veterinary Assessment, and they recommend that candidates not be approved to take the NAVLE more than 5 times. And then they also have a limit on how many years after that attempt and all that. But and I think as a member, we agreed to a maximum of 5 attempts to pass the NAVLE. But these are only recommendations. I'm not sure if I hope I have this correct. Y'all please correct me if I misspeak. But it's a board decision whether or not the board accepts passing scores from another jurisdiction from an applicant who took the test more than 5 times to pass. So, from my understanding, the AAVSB only allows the VETTEC national exam to be taken 5 times. Then the applicant's got to apply to take it an additional time and get permission from that board. And then that board sends an authorization to the state where the applicant is wanting to enter or where they already are, and then basically ask if we would allow them to take it again. Would we allow them to take the state board exam? Really where there tends to be a problem is if an applicant is wanting to come in and from a different jurisdiction that has unlimited attempts to pass the NAVLE and exceeds that 5-time limit, or a person from in a jurisdiction in Texas fails their attempts and then goes to another jurisdiction without limits and ultimately passes and then tries to come back to Texas. From what I understand, the AAVSB owns and administers the VTNE and will permit comments to take that test, candidate to take that test 5 times. And then they start counting, I think, the exams after January 2006. And so the AASVB, they advise that if someone fails the NTNE 5 times, then they've got to request approval to take it again. And that they will usually allow that, but we can contact the state board, which the applicant is applying, to make sure that they will approve for them to take the state board if they would approve to take the state board. And generally, if a state board is going to deny a person to take the state board, then they will also deny the VTNE retake. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So currently, I don't think we have a rule or a statute or a policy to deny someone to set for the state board on the number of times it took to pass the VTNE. So do we need to create a rule or a policy to follow the AASVP policy for taking the NAVLE or the NPVE? And the reason for that is so that we would have some sort of a backing should we deny it. And then it goes on to some other issues, and I'm probably going to need some help from Ms. Allen on this, but nursing board allows up to 4 years for someone to become a license following graduation. And so I don't know, should we have a policy to limit the time post-graduation that takes someone to pass to take the NAVLE or the VTNE so for the first time, similar to what the nursing board has. I think we need to discuss the when a vet tech student can sit for the VTNE, because currently they have to graduate from an accredited program before they're allowed to sit for both the VTNE and the licensed vet tech exam in Texas. So veterinarians are allowed to take boards within 6 months of graduating. So should the same be allowed for vet techs? That's the question. So the question arises, can students submit their application for the VTNE to us so that we could verify if they were enrolled and graduating within a certain time frame so that they could be allowed to sit for the VTNE before graduation? And then we in turn will allow students to take the state board if they have passed the NAVLE or the NTV with 60 days of graduating.
Some of the questions regarding what Dr. White's talking about on the VTNE is because COVID impacted our vet tech programs. I'm not familiar with the vet schools, so I can't speak for them, but we were really fortunate to get our second years graduated in May. In part, they have completion of 350 documented knowledge-based or hands-on skills. And so there was some issues with some of those individuals either being in clinics to get those skills done, or when we had to go remote back in the spring and we were unable to have those students in for those hands-on skill assessments and sign off. And that's conditional on part of their graduate requirements from our programs, is it would delay them taking their national board, and our VTNEs only offered 3 times a year in 3 30-day windows. So if students graduate in May, they do have an opportunity to take a July-August window. But if they don't get that or they don't graduate, then they're bumped out to November, December. And, you know, obviously the board didn't meet over the summer, so that couldn't be decided on, but I've become aware of a, you know, email. Ms. Simon communicated that another program recently asked for consideration along the same lines as veterinarians. Would students be allowed, and a set limited time like that 6 months, to sit for the VTNE before they graduate? So when they walk out the door, they're not out waiting until that next testing window to sit for it. Because some, and you know, it's not mandated in Texas to be a licensed vet tech. Some practitioners, it doesn't matter. Some students don't sit for it. That's something as program people were struggling with getting students to sit for that licensure exam. You know, it's $300. So for some of our students, it's a cost issue. Or some will say, well, my doctor doesn't care if I'm licensed. I said, well, you should care if you're licensed. But because of those testing windows, it sets up some challenges because some practitioners base raises and pay on completion of those licenses. So sometimes those students are out waiting, you know, until that testing window happens before they can sit. And, you know, it's a given, the longer they're away from formal instruction, the harder it is for them to pass an exam. And the average pass rate nationally on that VTNE is about 74% for first-time test takers.
Yeah, so to me, it kind of boils down to 3 things I think we need to discuss. So do we need to create a rule or a policy to follow the AASVB policy of 5 attempts to take the NAVLE or the NVTE? NVTE, man, I can't get that right. Should we have a policy or rule for a limited time post-graduation that someone can sit for both of those national exams for the first time? And should vet tech students be allowed to sit for the VTNE and the state board exams prior to graduation like is allowed for veterinarians?
Okay, so I have a couple comments on that. I know we did have some issues this year because of COVID, but I thought because of that, we were able to make compromises with the students who weren't quite, did we not do that? Did students sit this year? You're muted, Sue Allen. Brittany, do you know?
I don't know.
We had this discussion earlier this year, but
we did. And so my reading of our rules is that there's no requirement that LVT candidates have graduated to sit for the VTNE either at the state level or the AAVSB level. And so my comment has always been that yes, there's a specific specific section of our rules that says veterinarians can sit for the exam 6 months out.
But there's no
specific comment for vet techs, but there's also no prohibition or requirement that they have graduated from either the state board level or the AAVSB level. So I didn't see necessarily, especially in these COVID times, why that should prohibit someone from taking the test this time around.
My concern and the difference I feel like, and I've been involved with Lone Star College here in Tomball, they have a good LVT program. And I actually taught a couple courses there when they needed someone, but my concern is this. So fourth year vet students are pretty much done with their curriculum. They have done all their curriculum and they are in clinics. So they're honing their skills, their personal skills, their medical skills, their surgery skills. Are LVTs done with everything but clinicals 6 months before they're graduated? I think they still have coursework to do, don't they?
Most do, yes.
So how are we setting them up for failure, letting them sit 6 months earlier if they haven't sat for a quarter of their classes in 2 years?
It could be very restrictive on those that would pass it. That's very true. I mean, I figured there was a difference in the education. You might get a handful of students in programs that could pass that before they completed their studies. You know, just passing is really challenging for a lot of students, even after completion of studies.
I know it is very tough. So, you know, I don't want to set anyone up for failure or waste their money because they have to pay for it again if they take it again.
Yes.
But certainly if someone maybe had credits and then joined an LVT program and was finished with coursework and just needed to do their clinical at a clinic or whatever, you know, whatever parts they do. I'm just going from one program that I have experience with and how it works. So I don't know exactly, sorry. You know, if they're finished with their coursework classes and have passed those or whatever's required, to me, at any time they could sit. But I guess Ms. Sharkey is saying there is no rule of us or AAVSB that says they have to be a graduate to sit.
Correct. And so the reading of the rules was that because there's that specific section for veterinarians saying that they can take it 6 months, there was kind of an inferred prohibition for vet techs.
Right.
And I think sort of, especially for this year with the unique situation that COVID presented us with, it made sense to say, well, there's no prohibition. So let's go ahead and, you know, read it that way and kind of give a special dispensation this year. But I'm not necessarily sure that we need to make policies or rules on this specific issue, because I think this might be a strictly kind of COVID related
situational
set of circumstances, exactly, where we might not have this, where there's these folks that are on the cusp that just haven't graduated, but are completely done with their coursework and all of that, and are just kind of waiting on official blessing from their institution before they can take the test.
Yeah, the AAVSB lets it be up to each state or province to set those mandates. They just require a final official transcript for vet tech students to register to take it.
I appreciate Dr. White's work on this. Doesn't sound like it's all that exciting, Dr. White, but I appreciate you bringing it to us and helping us out. You know, I really think it's probably something that is we often overthink. I think probably if we set the rules kind of standard of 6 months before you graduate, whether you're a vet tech or a veterinarian, you know, you're kind of in the same boat. Some of us are probably not ready 6 months before we graduate from vet school, you know, take that test, and you're kind of, it's at your discretion. So I think 6 months is certainly reasonable on either one of those issues. And as far as the five times taking the test, certainly I think that is definitely kind of a standard that's already been set. I'm not sure. To me, I don't even know what to think about whether you have a time limit about how far out you can take it. I don't really know that it matters. I guess if you wanted to take it 8 years later and you felt like you could pass it and you didn't pass it 5 times, well, that's, you know, that case is kind of mute. So.
Yeah, I agree. Not that I have a horse in this race, just these are things I thought we need to talk about.
I agree with Dr. Skaggs. I agree completely with what you just said, Dr. Skaggs. I feel that everything you said is nice and straightforward. It's easy to understand. And if we are going to proceed with some kind of a rule or guidance on this, I want it to be very clear and uncomplicated.
I think 2 points. AAVSB is actually a service board to all the state boards who regulate, or anyone who regulates veterinary medicine. So when we go to their meetings and we're having discussions, they talk about what most states are doing and what they might see as this is a good idea, but it's not something we are required to follow. I guess anyone speak up if don't have that thought correctly. But the second thing is I also agree. Our goal, we're certainly regulators and basically we protect the public, but when or where someone passes that exam, whether you're able to do it. I mean, I had classmates who it took 4 times. That doesn't mean they're not as good of a vet as I am. It's stress, it's anxiety, test stuff. It's the same test where I think, and they do change the questions on the test periodically, which is good because you don't want to take it 8 times and then you've memorized all the questions and you're able to answer the test. So I think that's not a concern really for me. And although we're regulatory, we really don't want to inhibit people from coming to work in Texas and doing their job in Texas and serving our public. So I don't know, where to go from here, but I just wanted to put in my 2 cents on those.
Two comments on that. I think Candace has something to add. But where this came up this year was a practitioner who had taken it 6 times, practiced out of state for several, over a decade, and then wanted to come into Texas and buy this policy. It was an issue coming in for state licensure. And then just to comment on what you just said, Dr. Quillivan, I mean, that's the governor's priority is not to have any barriers to admission into Texas. And so that should just be added in there as well. But Candace, go ahead with yours.
What originally started this is when we revamped the applications for DVMs, LVTs, and EDPs. There's a question on there that says, to your knowledge, have you ever failed a licensing exam? If yes, give the state, county, jurisdiction type, and type of exam below. My question was, it's required to have passed these, and so if they're applying, that means they passed it. So why are we asking this question? What does it matter? Was my initial thought process. So when I talked to Wanda in licensing about why we have this, how did it come about? So we are a member of ICVA, which is the holder of the NAVLE. ICVA sends out to all of the state boards an agreement that says this is our recommendations and our guidelines, which it's the 5 times of taking the exam with some other, there has to be certain timeframes in between taking it and that kind of stuff. And either you adopt it or you don't adopt it as a state agency. And so 33 states have adopted the ICVA's policy. 15 states have no limits on the retakes. 1 says contact the board, because you can go to ICVA and it'll tell you by state what that board has chosen. 24 states will accept the scores of taking over 5 times. 14 states, to include Texas, will not accept the scores over 5 times. 2 are undecided. 13 say contact the board. And the reason why that number equals 52 is because they're including the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia in those numbers. And so to me, ICVA automatically will block someone in Texas from taking it, and if they have failed it 5 times. ICVA will block it if someone has taken it in a state that allows more than 5 times to take it, and then they want to transfer and come to Texas and try to take it in Texas. ICVA is blocking that request to take the NAVLE, and so we don't even know about it unless that person contacts us directly and starts asking questions. And so theoretically, Arizona, you can take it as many times as you want. A practitioner in Arizona, it took them 6 times to pass the NAVLE. They passed it. They've been practicing for 20 years. Now they want to come to Texas. By agreeing to the ICVA standards and policies, we would deny that person a right to practice in Texas. And so we just have to, on this agreement that we send, so that nationally other states can see what we do, we have to either say, yes, we're going to adopt it, no, we're not, or contact the board and take those as a case-by-case situation. And that's for the NAVLE and ICVA. On the VTNE and AASVB side, they have a 5-time limit, but AASVB will contact the state boards and say, this person has petitioned to take it again. If we allow it, will you allow them to set for the state board? Yes or no? We have been, because we don't have any prohibition against it, saying, yes, we will right now. And on that side, the NAVLE is a little more stricter because they actually block it and we don't have a say in that. Does that make sense?
It does, and thank you for all that. And I am thinking we need to change that. Is there, how do we do that?
So I think we just need an affirmation of the full board on which way you want to go. This is a staff function with the agreement. So we just need to know where the board wants to be on this, and then we'll carry it out.
Other opinions? I think we heard them previously. Do we want to just go down the row here and give your opinion on if we extend the times or have no limit, or what does everyone think?
Yeah, I don't think we should have a limit personally.
Okay. Dr. Skaggs?
I kind of think we should have a limit, but I'm not 100% set on that.
Okay, that's fine. Nixon?
I also am a little concerned about the standards in Texas, but I also am not thrilled to see people penalized for numerous academic issues, dyslexia challenges, test taking challenges. I don't want to see them penalized with just 5 attempts. So I think I'd rather have no limit and then let them come. And then if they meet the standards, they'll have a job.
Or that kind of might sound like seek the board's permission first, or?
Yeah, or you could seek the board's permission. I don't want to stop anybody from coming to the state who could be an asset to public welfare, for animals, for veterinarians, for our workforce. And I personally know that I have a son who's severely dyslexic, and I would like to see grace if we have got vet tech. Vet tech is a hard degree, and it's a tough school, and I just don't want to see them penalized with an absolute hard and fast limit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chacon? Unmute. Carlos, you're muted.
I believe that 5 times is enough. It shows competence. It shows training and ability to cope with situations. And I'm fine. I will be open to what Dr. Mixon suggested, which is they can come to the board for an exemption or for an extension of the 5 times based on something unique to them. And I'd rather deal with a case like that per case basis than to just broaden it up where they can just try it 10 times.
Okay.
Dr.
Ms. White?
Quillen, can I get a clarification? Because we're talking about the NAVLE, right?
Yes, the VTNE is already set up to where if they've gone past a certain point, AAVSB is going to contact us, and that's who's in charge of that test, I believe. So
Right.
we're
So
going to get contacted on that, but we're not getting, my concern is we're not getting contacted by ICVA. That's
Right.
really their job. So we either have to tell ICVA, you know, there's no limit, or I don't even know if they will take the time to contact us, or how that pass through will work. Candace, can you remind me? I think you might have said it, but
Yeah, we have to fill a form out with them that can be changed at any time that says, you know, whether we adopt it or not, which that causes the block, whether we don't and we have unlimited, or whether it's a contact the board. And let me just say, the VT&E I know already has that, but there hasn't been. So what I found with Wanda is that we were automatically denying these,
right.
or we were sending to the board for approval. And I said, and I asked for clarification from her as to, is it the board as a whole? Is it a committee? Is it the executive director? What is that? And so she didn't know from our previous times and when it got sent forward, where it went or what happened with that. Sending it, just my personal opinion, sending it for a full board vote delays time considerably.
Yeah.
And usually there's circumstances. We recently had one, and I don't remember if it was a veterinarian or if it was a technician that attempted it, went to school, graduated, attempted it, failed it, ended up going out of country for circumstances unknown, practiced in that country for years, was coming back into our country, and there were some issues with that. And it was because of the years, the amount of years that had went by since their last attempt. Let me also add, on the NAVALI, you can take it 3 times back to back if you want, but on that 4th and a 5th attempt, ICVA makes the person sit out for 1 year between those attempts.
Wow.
So there's just some more, and really what I'm looking for is the direction that the board wants to go, so that then licensing knows when they come in how they're supposed to do this, and you know, whether it's something that you want for full board approval, you want licensing committee approval, you want executive director level approval, or if there are certain stipulations put in place, something that the licensing supervisor can do on their level.
Okay. There's people we haven't heard from on the board. Ms. Whitehead, do you have any thoughts or comments on this situation?
I can only relate to licensing with real estate and the legal profession. I know in the legal profession, you can only take the bar 5 times in Texas. Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 5.
Good, Brittany. There you go.
There's you can take it 3 times in 2 years, and then if you don't pass, you have to sit out for 5 years. And then I think there's a total cap of 5, or at least that's how it was when I took it a million years.
And I can relate to Dr. Mixon's comments and the fact that I have a friend who can quote every single bar exam study guide, and she knows the law 10-fold more than I do, yet she has failed the bar 4 times now. And she's nervous to take it again because, and she's put so much investment in this education, and she'd be a way better attorney than I'd be. So I think a process where we do have a cap, because you want to provide some sort of structure within your licensing, but a process to petition a board for special circumstances. Additionally speaking, time limits coming out of your education. I think there's a difference in someone coming in from a current practice outside of state versus someone in school, then subsequently taking the exam. I think there you get into situations of education. And, if I went to school in the 70s and I'm now trying to take the exam, that's a different situation than someone who's been practicing elsewhere and wanting to be licensed here. So just some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Sue Allen, I know you focus on the LVT part, but do you have any comment on this part of the veterinary examining?
Dr. Mixon talked about, a dyslexic child. I was recently shared a story by a veterinarian who had a classmate that had dyslexia, and when they got out, there weren't the accommodations necessary. It was like 10 years later before they successfully passed, and they're a very good veterinarian, so it wasn't a lack of competency. I would not be against having a limit on the number of attempts of a NAVLE before they appeal, just like the VTNE. When we were still under the TVMA, if a student took it 5 times and didn't pass, the appeal went back to the program that they came from for the program to speak for that student to, say, yes, we think they should be allowed to take it again. I don't know if it would need to go in front of the whole board or the licensing committee or Mr. Hellenberg as the executive director, but, maybe have a limit on times and then they appeal. But there's all different circumstances too. Learning disabilities, test anxiety is a huge thing.
Yeah. Lynn?
So I don't think we should have a limit. And also, I think anyone who's been practicing in another state for multiple years should be able to get a license in the state, especially if they've been practicing in good standing. And just a little funny ha-ha story. I'd been invited by a client to take the Aflac duck to Las Vegas for Aflac. And so I called Nevada to see if I could get a temporary license, and they don't do temporary license, it's full licensure. And they wanted my NAVLE scores for the past 5 years, but I didn't take the NAVLE. I took the old school, what was that? The national boards.
Yeah, we didn't have ICBA back then.
And so I think I laughed for like 5 minutes on the phone before. I'm like, I'm not taking the NAVLE to get a license in Nevada to take the Aflac duck with a client to Nevada. It would have been a great time. It would have been really fun, and I thought that was ridiculous. And so just by that experience, I think it's ridiculous for someone to be practicing for 20 years, be in good standing in another state, and then be required to retake an exam when they have not been in school for 20 years, because there's going to be a lot of information on there that you aren't privy to, especially if you're just equine or just small animal, or food animal for that matter. That's a whole lot of your life studying to move. Now, if you have to move because like a spouse moved or you elected to change your life and still need a license in that state, and they required a NAVLE exam in order to practice, or they needed a different score than the one you had, that could be problematic. And I think that's probably some of the issues we have here is the scores that we require in Texas might be 1 or 2 points off of a score that they have in the other states. But since I've never taken the NAVLE, I don't know specifically. So yeah, I think if you're coming straight out of school, maybe you should, maybe there should be a limit, because that information is current to the information in the exam. But I think if you've been practicing, and as they tell us in school, once you've been out for 5 years, everything you learned is somewhat obsolete. And I don't know how often they update or change the questions. It could be problematic and time consuming and financially a hardship in more than one way, not just the financial aspect of having to pay for taking those exams again, but also the time expenditure of having to study for those exams. And what you've been doing for 10 years works really well, but hey, there's all this new stuff that might be considered more current or appropriate on the exam. And even the stuff you're used to doing might not be on there. So my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Pardue, last but definitely not least, can you give us some input and your thoughts on this topic? I don't see you and I don't hear you, but you're not muted.
Hello?
Hello.
Dr. Queller, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's a little
Hello?
sketchy. It's like cutting.
So
in the house.
I believe that there should be a 5-time limit with some exceptions. There ought to be a provision to allow additional attempts under special circumstances. I think there'd be a general time. Can you hear me?
You're cutting out on and off quite a bit.
DJ Jazzy Pardue has never sounded better, has he?
DJ Jazz.
I think if I understood it though, he said he wanted a 5 test limit with special exceptions for circumstances.
Yeah.
I
We
suspect
definitely agree that we don't want ICVA turning them away without giving
That
them
is
to talk
correct.
to us in some way, shape, or form.
Correct.
Brittany, can we roll with that and make some sort of, or Candace, can we roll with that and make some sort of plan with ICVA, or how do we do that?
Yeah, so I think what it is there's a choice of yes, no, or contact the board.
Contact
It seems
now.
to be contact the board, and that we're not placing restrictions. Is that correct?
I think it would be a good idea for us to have some kind of game plan going forward about who looks at those special circumstances. And I'm certainly confident with a group of the staff
Licensing
looking at
committee.
those, or
Okay.
Dr. Quillivan, president of the board, plus a staff member, to evaluate those so that they don't have to bring them to the whole board for us to evaluate them. We get kind of a general idea of what those special circumstances might be, and then they don't have to check off with anybody.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably the best thing to do because it still gives them an appeal authority to the whole board. If they're not satisfied with staff's decision, it gives them another layer of protection to be able to appeal to the whole board.
And we'll work with the licensing committee
I
to
would like that.
to
Yep.
work out some specifics.
How that's gonna work.
And we've got Sue. I think Sue, as our licensed person in this matter, who knows the most, would be a great person to assist in this.
But we're just talking about the DVM. side.
Yeah, we need some DVMs to weigh in here, not just LVT.
I know, I'm just saying that let's not leave Sue out because I'd like to know your opinion on those.
Didn't I ask her to weigh in?
Yes,
I asked everyone, didn't I? Did I miss?
yes.
Mixon, you're making me feel bad.
No, that's not what I meant. You misunderstand. I'm saying when it comes to looking at the special cases,
Oh, she's the special case
She-
lady.
if- yeah,
I wasn't
special
aware
case.
of that.
special case lady.
Okay. Any other discussion on item 5? Okay, let's move on to item number 6. Discussion regarding non-licensed equine dentistry, Dr. Mixon and our committee chair.
Okay, so this topic fell in my lap again because 3 weeks ago I had to go into a horse's mouth 2 weeks after an unlicensed equine dental provider had worked on the horse.
Okay, so don't use the term equine dental provider, just say an unlicensed person has worked on the horse, right?
Oh, okay.
EDP or a veterinarian, correct?
Right. So this was an unlicensed person,
Yeah.
yes, had gone into the mouth. And so it was a difficult situation for the owner because, they had paid for a service and they thought they had gotten work done and they had not. And so Carl Mitz and I were discussing the situation and he has a letter and I'm going to read the parts of it that are pertinent. He said, "My name is Carl Mitz. I live in Washington, Texas. I've been an equine dental provider since 1985 and a certified equine dental provider since 1992. He is actually the founder of the Equine Dental Providers of America, past president, and he's the director of certification. The EDPA was founded in 2012 to provide continuing education and a board-approved certifying entity for certifying equine dental providers in Texas, okay? So as a member of that, he wanted to express some serious concerns to the board regarding Rule 801.260, in which our law states that an equine dental provider must be certified and licensed in order to practice in the state. Requirements in 571.6 also state the licensee must have 6 hours of approved CE annually. The concerns that Carl has and that I have had in the last 10 years is there has been the perception of veterinarians and other EDPs that have gone through the certification process, there's little to no enforcement. Now, having said that, we do have 2 cases of enforcement today in which there were cease and desist, and the investigators have done their job. But unfortunately, in the prior 8 years leading up to this, there has been no enforcement. So over the last 8 years, there's been less and less equine dental providers in Texas actually applying for certification because they've decided that it's not worth following our board rule or our statute because there's really very little that they perceive that can be done to them in a punitive way when they practice illegally in the state. So one of the things that I understand personally about this is that there is not much that the board can do beyond a cease and desist letter and a potential financial fine, which is very hard to enforce because pinning down the illegal providers is very difficult to do. So what I would like to discuss potentially today and maybe going forward is that the only thing I can think to protect the public in Texas is education. I don't know any other way to help protect horse owners from fraud, from medical negligence, from illegal medical services being provided, other than maybe a public education campaign. In 2021, maybe in the horse magazines, in the Western horse magazines, the English disciplines, maybe in conjunction with the Texas Veterinary Medical Association, some kind of public education for a year that we can put out a lot of information to say to horse owners, beware, be careful who works on your horse. Right now, we do have an illegal school set up in Amarillo that is producing these people, that is run by a gentleman that is already known to the board. And he moves that school around in an effort to evade investigators and being held accountable. So myself as a solo equine practitioner that does a lot of equine dentistry, it's near and dear to my heart that if the best we can do is a cease and desist, I would like to find a way personally to protect citizens in Texas, to protect horses in Texas from fraudulent services and fraudulent medicine and putting horses at risk. And the only way I can think to do that is a public education campaign on this one topic in 2021. That's the best I can come up with. Any thoughts?
I think we see unlicensed practice everywhere. We know we have massive cases on the border of unlicensed veterinarians coming across the border, and we haven't found a way to find them all, like you said, track them down, and even follow up with them. I think we also sometimes have a difficulty working with other actual law enforcement agencies because I can see that some of these cases could even potentially be, I guess, animal abuse cases or animal, some type of legal case against these people who are harming animals. The question is, who, what, where does a massive Texas public education campaign on that? Are we using our staff members who are already taxed? I mean, it just seems like such a big monster. And I agree. I hate these cease and desist letters because there are people practicing without licenses in our state, but I don't know.
I would be willing to do that. I mean, I would be willing to write articles, give public talks. I would do, for a year, I would be willing to commit, what can I do in the state of Texas to even raise the awareness for horse owners to be very, very savvy when looking for care, not to be misled, and to stand up more for themselves and for their horse who cannot speak.
And Dr. Mixon, we can work with you to try to get some information out, by a video or some information that way. We are talking to the Sunset Commission about some of these challenges in other areas as well. And so one of the areas that we've looked at is some injunctive relief filed locally in a local court. And so we'll continue to pursue those, but this may be something that's, well, it's definitely going to have to be something handled in the legislative session when it comes to the enforcement provisions. But when it comes to the education provision, although we don't have any funding, we can certainly try to put some stuff together and publish information that maybe we can get out to our veterinarians who then can make it available to clients or something to that effect.
Well, I certainly appreciate Dr. Mixon's passion, and if anybody can change it, she can. Thank you for your work, Dr. Mixon.
Thank you, Dr. Skaggs. I'm going to try.
Well, because some of the challenges, some of these people are giving sedation that have no business giving sedation. And it's, xylazine in the carotid, and all the owners have is civil suit recourse. And they don't know. I mean, a lot of them don't know. Somebody said, yeah, I can do that. And they don't have the education to know the difference.
And that's really where my concerns come from. I feel like the horse owning public gets taken advantage of, and I feel the horses are put at risk. And I mean, a huge number, I would say most of them are using veterinary drugs illegally and they're obtaining them. And if I could protect even 50% of the horses that I'm seeing that have been fraudulently worked on, it would be a win.
Dr. Quillivan, just FYI, we lost Mr. Perdue here, and we're having trouble getting him back on. So he texted me and said that he was going to try to reboot and log back on, and if he couldn't, he'd let me know. So I was didn't want to interrupt and tell everyone that, but yeah, he's working on trying to reboot and log on so he can have a maybe clearer connection. So hopefully he'll be back soon. Other discussion, any other thoughts? Dr. Mixon, I'm with you. This is so frustrating to licensees and also to people who have gone through the process of licensing all three of our license holders types, and having other people doing things that we know are probably damaging, that we see not doing them well and hurting horses and the public. But yeah, hurting animals and creating more problems than they're fixing. And it feels like we're drowning in it, because it really does irk me. And I don't know that we have a lot of, but we can continue to certainly work on educating the public, which would be a great goal. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 7. We wanted to have a discussion regarding the process of medical review and informal conference proceedings and the processes associated with that. Dr. Kreiner.
Yeah, I think we've had a really great improvement in the process. I think the investigators have been fantastic in what they've been bringing to us. But I brought the agenda item 7 up because I would like the board staff to look at revamping or revising the form that we use for medical review. I think it needs to be updated basically so that's in line with our improved process of medical reviews that have been brought to us by the investigators and by all the changes that have been made since we've got this agency rebuilt.
Excellent. I think it was something we had talked about in the past. At least I know Mike Tacker and myself and Candace and Mr. Hellenberg had discussed. And I think bringing this discussion to the forefront will definitely get us focused on creating a form. Brittany, what are this is just kind of internal workings, right? If we create a form, and can we then share it with all our reviewers and get feedback on it? And does that have to be a board meeting or anything like that? This is just a internal function thing, right, Brittany?
Exactly. Yes, Dr. Quillivan. So we can work on it in conjunction with our folks who do medical review and make sure it's meeting whatever everyone's needs.
And it's nice, we do have, often we seek reviews from people who are not our board members, which not often enough, because I know y'all are very bogged down with reviewing cases, and thank you for all the hard work you guys put into the time and effort to review these cases, because some of them are very complex. Most of them are very, very complex. But some of the specialist reviews are very concise and even, you know, state what, who, what, why, when, where, and some facts behind the case. And of course, they can roll those off the top of their heads because they're specialists, and sometimes we have to do a little research to do that. But we'll definitely get that in motion and get something out. Any other input on that? Dr. Mixon, did you have some further input on that, or any other reviewers? Dr. Skaggs? Dr. White, I think you guys are the only ones.
I was wondering if there's something in particular that we were looking at on the forms that we fill out as reviewers, or were we looking more on the investigation side of that, or basically, what am I doing wrong?
No.
What I think that I would have liked to have had, because now that I've been on both sides, I've been in the medical review position, and now I'm on the informal conference side of it. And on both sides, I personally, when I was doing the medical reviews on that side, I would have liked a form that was a little more directive on, you know, stating, summarizing the case succinctly, and just helping the people that are sitting on the informal conference side to know exactly what was found in a very succinct way, and which rule, you know, how the rule got broken. It just needs to be, I'm sure there's got to be a better format that allows us to not have to think so much. And it could just be like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like using Avamark or Cornerstone software, right? Where it makes you look at this, at the systems in the animal. And I like those
Template, a template, like to do.
Yeah, the template,
whatever,
exactly.
So you don't forget anything, eyes, ears, nose.
Exactly, it's a template. So that you don't.
Oh, us veterinarians, we're so weird.
I love it. So I love the template. So I would like to see the medical review sheet be more of a template with things checked. And so it's basically more efficient to read, because boy, we do all of us spend a lot of time on these cases.
And especially when we come into these meetings and we're expected to approve or approve all these cases. How many, Brittany, did you say there were 200?
Yeah, I think there's 207 cases on the agenda today.
207 cases on our agenda. And, you know, some of them are from 2017. So we may have, or, you know, 2018, and we may have seen them before, but if I remember 2018 cases, that's really, I'm not going to. So then I'm rereading the whole thing again. And sometimes a summary could jog my memory and things like that. So we will work on that. Dr. White, do you have any other input or questions on that?
No, I mean, sometimes I feel like maybe I put too much in my.
There's no such thing.
I try to do a little chronology of what happened, and then try to explain why I think it should or should not go to informal conference. But sometimes I'm thinking like they're 2 pages long, and I'm like, maybe I'm going too much.
Yeah, but 2 pages, the case was probably 40 pages, right? Once
Right.
investigation happened and the phone calls and all of that, which our investigators are doing a lot more complex investigation, which helps us, but also then gives us a lot of information when you're having to do 200 at a time. So I agree, like with what you're doing, a 2-pager is fine with me, but it doesn't even have to be that much. So we want to more concise it so that maybe it actually makes your job easier, Dr. White, so you don't feel like you have to do 2 pages, but you know, the key concise points. But you can.
I think that was Dr. White firing shots over the bow of my ship there, saying mine are way too short.
No, no.
That's my attention span, Dr. White. It's about this long.
Hey, you've been sitting here paying attention for a long time, Dr. Skaggs. We appreciate you. Okay.
I just want to comment that I just kind of thought that was funny that you said our cases were only like 40 pages long.
Is that funny? They're longer, huh?
That's funny because I think it's more like 150 to 200.
Some of them are in the hundreds. Yes, I know. I understand. Sorry, I didn't mean to diminish the roles y'all are playing every day in helping the public. Any other discussion? And we'll work on that, and we'll expect to see something soon on maybe some feedback, and we'll get a better process going and a more consistent process. Okay, nothing else? Anyone need a bio break? It's been an hour and a half. Everyone good? We rolling?
Anyone want to do a jumping jack?
No, I do not want to do a jumping.
Just 3-4 minutes, 4 minutes.
Are we allowed to do that, Patricia? How does that work? Do we just like take a bio break?
I don't know. I think I'd have to stop the feed and then start it again.
Is that complex? And do we stay long?
Minute
Do we
before where we recess just for 3 minutes, and you have to keep your, we kept our screens on and ran to the powder room and back.
Powder room.
That'd be the best thing. We'll stay live and just to go into recess.
Just everyone kind of goes away. Okay. Well, oh gosh, my clock does not equal y'all's. It's 11:40 and we will take a 5-minute powder room break. I like those words, and we shall return. So I'm going to mute and walk away. We'll be back.
We've done all the pre-important stuff. Now we have to go through cases. Another 45 minutes.
Patricia, it says I can't start my video. There, you let me in.
Dr. Quillivan,
How are you?
much better. Thank you.
Good.
By the way, Keith has been asking me to bring him in. I can actually bring him in. His internet must be having problems in the neighborhood. I can bring him in through my cell phone because I don't have an iPhone like he does for FaceTiming, but I can bring him in on the audio portion of it so he can hear everything that is going on if you guys are okay with that.
Better than nothing if we can't get the video. What are the rules? Is Brittany back? Not yet.
It won't, it's telling me that it won't start my video.
Oh, but at least you're back on the audio then you're good, Keith.
That's the
That was
same,
Dr. White.
that's the same with me. It won't let me start my
There we go.
video.
Yeah, that's a bandwidth problem. What that means, guys, is that your internet is being used quite a bit around your neighborhood. So they're sharing the bandwidth, which means you get a little less.
I think Patricia's letting them in. I think Patricia's letting us in though.
Yeah,
Carlos, you are the most entertaining. I swear you are.
yeah, this thing told me that my video had been stopped by my host, but didn't let me in.
Well, my mama told me, never a dull moment, son.
Not from moment one, huh?
Hey, did I tell you I took her over to Cancun 2 weeks ago?
I think I knew that because I saw pictures.
I got Keith on the line, hold on. Hi, Keith.
So Brittany, is that okay? All we have is Keith on audio on Carlos's phone.
That's okay. He's showing up as a participant in the video, though. He's on the list of folks on the call. So we'll just make note that he was having connectivity issues in the minutes. It's really only an issue if there's an issue of quorum, but we have 100% attendance today. So we'll just make note of it, though, that he was in and out due to connectivity.
Oh, we want his input.
Yes.
Okay. So it is.
Wait, guys, Keith says that he can get in if you give him permit, Patricia. At least for the audio portion. There you go. Okay. You're in? Bye, buddy.
I'm going to call it. It's 11:47 and we are back from our break, back into our board meeting. Thank you all. Thanks, Mr. Chacon, for recommending that. It was a good timing. We'll now move on to item agenda 8, consideration and approval of agreed orders. Ms. Sharkey.
Yes, so thank you to the board members who submitted their cases that they are wanting to discuss in executive session. The list I have of agreed orders to discuss in executive session is CP 18187, CP 19094, CP 19111, CP 19218, CP 200222, CP 20185, and CP 2234. So barring those, no one has raised a flag on it.
LA 2107, I think I sent you, which is part of these dockets. And you are frozen.
Oh no, am I back?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll add that to the list. Are there any other agreed orders that the board members wish to pull in executive session? Okay. All right. Then the rest are can be approved if there's a motion.
May I have a motion to approve agenda item 8, the removed cases,
Motion to remove cases
and approve?
and approve the other cases.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mixon. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. We'll move on to, as I flip through my pages, agenda item 9, which are consideration and approval of cases recommended for dismissal by enforcement. Did you have pulled cases, Brittany?
No, Dr. Quillen.
Oh, wait. I sent you a list.
To your meeting ID, followed by pound.
Yes, Dr. Kreiner, you did, but this is just for the cases dismissed from enforcement. None of the cases you sent me were on the list for item 9.
Not, oh, okay, sorry. I'm skipping around. I'm using 2 computers, sorry.
Can I have a motion?
So
Motion
moved.
to dismiss?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? Okay, motion carries. Item number 10, consideration and approval of cases recommended for dismissal from legal. Ms. Sharkey.
Thank you. The case numbers I have that have been submitted to me for discussion in executive session are CP 18152, CP 18309, CP 18329, CP 19056, CP 19060, CP 19082, CP 19297, CP 20004, CP 20007, CP 20106, CP 2107, CP 2127, CP 2190, CP 2257. Oh, sorry, it would help if I could read my handwriting. That is 237, not 257. CP 20250 and CP 2268.
Brittany, there's one error on there. The one that we corrected was CP 19287.
287. Yes, you are correct. Thank you, Dr. Mixon.
You're welcome.
Dr. Quillivan, I have a question. Do I need to, these are not being brought up for executive discussion, but I know 2 of the people listed on these cases for dismissal. Do I need to recuse myself?
Yes, I actually sent mine. So before we vote,
I'm
usually
sorry, I didn't do that.
state our recusals, and I think I sent mine to Ms. Sharkey already. So Ms. Sharkey, you should have those, but some are stated if they've been involved in the case. So you can go ahead and state the ones you need to recuse yourself from in this section.
That is CP 18216 and CP 20202.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. We got those.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is, I've also recused myself from CP 18329, but Brittany's got that. Thank you.
Okay, and I think mine are printed on this final copy, so that should be public record. Thank you, Brittany. Can I have an approval for item number 10 without the extracted cases?
Motion to approve, to dismiss the cases?
No. Oh,
Oh, council?
you're making a motion.
Yes, motion to dismiss the cases presented by council for dismissal.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And on to agenda item 11. Wow, there's a lot of cases in there. Page 5,032,000. Okay, sorry, here we are. Oh, item number 11, consideration and approval of cease and desist letters. Ms. Sharkey.
Yes, we have no pulls from that section.
Okay. I need a motion. Anyone?
Motion for
Approval of the cease.
approval of the cease orders.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any discussion? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, citizen comments. I believe we have 2 public members who are going to be present for their comments. And Patricia is probably working on that as we speak.
Yes, we asked the public members to watch on the YouTube broadcast link until we called for public comment. So for those of you out there, please go ahead and log into the Zoom link at this time.
And we're operating on a little delay from YouTube to live. So we'll just give them a few minutes, but it looks like we have one that jumped in there now.
Yes, so when you're ready, just say the word and I will let her in.
Ms. Ware will be first. Okay, we're ready for our first public comment. Good morning, Ms. Ware. Unmute yourself. Bottom left of your screen should be. There you are. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, welcome to our meeting, and you have 3 minutes for your public comment.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I'd like to make a noteworthy clarification to the TBVME record regarding one of the cases on the agenda today and request that it be properly memorialized in the meeting minutes. For the non-TBVME audience, informal conferences are the last stage in the investigation of a complaint and held only in instances where probable violations exist. Case CP 19293, listed under cases recommended for dismissal by legal, was actually recommended for dismissal by informal conferences. In fact, not one, but 2 informal conferences. The case was first heard during a November 2019 informal conference before an enforcement committee comprised of board staff. They rightly concluded that the licensee violated the rules of professional conduct and issued a board order. The licensee rejected it and requested a do-over. A second informal conference took place in July 2020, and that enforcement committee, which included veterinary professionals who are more likely to revere the actor's carefully curated professional image and specialist status, recommended case dismissal. To my knowledge, the special dispensation of a second informal conference was unprecedented. Regardless, in recent TBVME meeting minutes, cases recommended for dismissal from informal conferences were reflected as such, not lumped into cases recommended for dismissal by legal. Not making this important distinction marginalizes the serious nature of this case, implying that it never went to informal conference when in fact it went to 2, and seems to represent yet another special dispensation for this licensee, and any others where probable violations were deemed to have existed, resulting in informal conferences. I therefore ask that the meeting minutes, the official public record, specify which cases were recommended for dismissal from informal conferences to clearly distinguish them from those that were recommended for dismissal beforehand by legal. As a healthcare professional, citizen, and taxpayer of Texas, I find it appalling that TBVME has so grossly mismanaged my very legitimate complaints regarding my dog's 2013 CBLO surgery for so many years, unfairly affording every advantage to the licensee. The countless apologies have become meaningless as the TBVME has perpetually miscarried its stated mission, philosophy, and goals, putting the public at risk and bringing into question why this so-called regulatory agency exists. Please at least properly document your actions and inactions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we have a Mr. Sessom also attending for public comment. Thank you, Patricia. coming online. Howdy, Mr. Sessom.
Howdy.
Thanks for being here. You have 3 minutes for your public comment.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Dr. White, I wanted to thank you for your research on the issue with the AAVSB and the VTNE. And a recommendation for that from LVTs is that we set a 3-year limit after graduation to take your VTNE. So after graduation, you have 3 years to complete that. There's a statute in place for nurses to already do that. That can be considered for that. Reason we want that is to elevate our own standards. The state also uses funds to build vet tech programs. There are currently 11 programs in the state of Texas. There are more that are applying for AVMA accreditation. And I hear all the time from veterinarians that can't find LVTs. So there's a lot of programs and we need to make them licensed. They don't just need to be graduate, they need to be licensed veterinary technicians. So I think that'll help some of those issues. There is a 5-time limit, but you don't necessarily, you don't have to take the VTNE after graduation. And I know one of the concerns of Dr. Mixon was also accommodations for students with test anxiety. If they have diagnosed issues in school and they have accommodations while they're in school, those accommodations can easily be applied for with AAVSB, the same for vet students. So those issues can be addressed. So that 3-year time frame is a recommendation from myself as a licensed veterinary technician and also other LVTs. I would also like to discuss nomenclature. So I see from the discussion with Dr. Mixon that EDPs are non-credentialed personnel are an issue in the equine industry as well. So enforcing name tags or enforcing nomenclature may help with that, possibly a name tag law, but other ways that the board can enforce that. I think is the state board's job is to protect the public. So this is an issue that needs to be addressed as well. One of the things we're looking at in veterinary medicine is it is a culture change. For so long, we've called people veterinary technician without license in front of it. So it does take a while to do those, but that is a suggestion that we start to enforce proper nomenclature. That enforcement adds value to the education of not only LVTs, but also certified veterinary assistant and EDPs. So we would like the board to consider that. And from a personal perspective, you hear the term preferred pronoun so much in social media or social issues with those. For us, it's professional. It's our professional preferred pronoun, and to not use that nomenclature is very discouraging. So we'd like the board to enforce proper use of the terms that are listed in the Practice Act. Another issue that I comment on is the scope of practice. So the EDP scope of practice, possibly adding that to LVTs as the scope of practice as well, because an issue with equine dental providers is there's not very many available. So there are quite a few LVTs. So working with Carl and others with EDPA, my program and others in the state of Texas have been contacted by EDPA to work together to develop a curriculum so we could enhance that relationship. But I believe that would make more people available to horse owners to have oversight of veterinarians, but also educated professionals so that we can prevent injury to horses and other animals as well. And also the last comment real quickly is that in the Sunset Review self-report, the LVT Advisory Committee was left out of that report. So we would just like that to be corrected in the future. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sessom. I'll also point out to the board, we had 6 other written public comments that are in our board book from LVTs following Mr. Sessom's lead there on making sure that we're recognizing and understanding their commitment. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we are moving forward to item number 13, I believe, if I'm on track here. Discussion of possible agenda items for future board meetings. Obviously, some of the things we're doing now, possibly a new proposal for wording of our CE allotment, or how we're going to word that. I don't think anything else we did today requires board meeting, just discussions or the licensing committee or something like that. Anyone have any other issues? We kind of brought them all to this one, but by the next board meeting, I'm sure we'll have ones to add on, Brittany.
Yeah,
Any-
I have one. I think I asked before about the temporary licensing, and you can have 2 a year, but it didn't have to be 60 days consecutive. Did that ever get actually changed? Or do we need to talk about this again?
So there were adjustments made that were going to be proposed to the Texas Register, but we are currently deferring. The Texas Register is processing rules related to the various emergencies around the state, first coronavirus and now hurricanes and all of that. So while we're in state of emergency, we try not to, they've asked us not to bog down the system. So we are respecting that. But that will be probably up for consideration at the next board meeting to publish.
So I think what Brittany's saying is at our last meeting, we devised a rule and a change, but we are waiting to post it to public register. And then of course it has to be there for a while before we can bring it back as a rule to approve and read the comments on it or anything like that. So it's in the process, but it is pending due to COVID and other emergency requests to not submit things that aren't as important as those. Okay, Dr. White? Okay.
Ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Agenda item 14, we will be moving into executive session to discuss any pending and contemplated litigation and personnel matters and the cases we have pulled. It is 12:03 p.m.
So Dr. Quillivan, the plan is that we're going to leave the live feed up and then move everyone to the executive session.
Okay.
If for some reason that doesn't work and we lose the live feed capability, we will restart the live feed when we come out of executive session.
Okay. So we should all see a prompt saying, do you want to go into the room? The scary room.
The dark place.
The dark place. Nice, Carlos. Hey, it stopped raining.
Not my way.
Yeah, you guys being pounded with rain like
It's been
crazy.
raining for 2 days straight. It just stopped, but it'll start again. You guys have nothing, Victoria? Dry, 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 huh?
So dry right now.
Okay, breakout room 2. Off we go.
Patricia, do we just sit here and wait?
Yes, you can turn your cameras off if you want to. I will get a notification when they're finished and let them all back in.
Okay.
baboon.
The host muted everyone. That's rude, Patricia. Okay, it is, according to whichever clock I choose to look at, 1:53 p.m. We are back from executive session and into our board meeting. We will go back to agenda item number 8, consideration and approval of agreed orders. We have no cases holding out of there. Can I get a motion to approve our agreed orders?
Motion to approve on agreed orders.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. We had already approved 9 because we had no pulls from that. So item number 10, consideration and approval of cases recommended for dismissal from legal. We have a few that we are going to withhold from there. Ms. Sharkey, can you list those for us? Is she back? I don't see her.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, y'all. Those cases are CP 18309, CP 19082, CP 19287, CP 20007, CP 20106, CP 20107, CP 2190, and CP 2268.
Okay, besides those cases, can I get a motion to approve the other dismissals?
Motion to approve the other dismissals outside of the ones mentioned.
Second.
Did I hear a second, Dr. White?
Yes, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? Thank you. And we are down to agenda item 15. Oh, we're back already. We already did that. Oh my, we're down to agenda item 16, which is adjournment. It's 1:55 p.m. I'm banging my gavel.
Just need a motion from
We need a
someone.
motion.
Oh, darn it.
Oh, wait, before you
End
do
our
that,
meeting, please.
before you do that, are we looking at another date?
Oh, we do sometimes set forward our dates. Are we allowed to do that if it's not on the agenda? I don't think so.
Okay, it's all good. Just checking.
We'll send some. We need, now that we are allowed to Zoom until we can meet in person, we can do them regularly, but our fiscal year is about to end, correct? So we're about to be on a new year.
Our fiscal year ended.
Yeah, this year-
September, oh, before this, we're in a new,
Yeah, we're in a new fiscal year.
thank you. Yep. Okay, so did I say that time?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you. Our meeting is adjourned. It is 1:56 p.m.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
y'all.
Have a
Bye,
great.
everyone.
Congratulations, Victoria. That was a long first meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully the next one will be in person
Thanks
and
for
so much
coming.
shorter.
I agree.
It gets better too. It moves pretty quick afterward.
Have a good
Welcome
day.
again.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.